Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And good to see you all here this morning. I'm glad you could make it. Well, during the past few weeks, we've been discussing a text that many of you may be familiar with, the Fukan Zazenji, written by Kaizon Dogen. First, in about 1227, when he came back from China with great enthusiasm about Zazen. And he wanted to describe Zazen in such a way and recommend it in such a way that everyone could benefit from it, be they lay people or monastics or men or women, young or old, wealthy or poor, sick or well. So we've been sort of dissecting this writing of Dogen's. And last week, we talked a lot about Ishiro, non-thinking. And the next little passage that follows that discussion of non-thinking in the Fukan Zazenji is what we'll look at today. And I'll read this to you and put it on the screen as well so that it might be easier to absorb. The Zazen I speak of is not learning meditation. It is simply the Dharma gate of repose and bliss. The practice realization of totally culminated enlightenment. It is the manifestation of ultimate reality. Traps and snares can never reach it. Once its heart is grasped, you are like a dragon gaining the water, like a tiger taking to the mountains. For you must know that just there in Zazen, the right Dharma is manifesting itself, and that from the first, dullness and distraction are struck aside. So the Dharma gate of repose and bliss. Now, all of you have had varying experiences with meditation practice and have become familiar with what it's like for you. And I think we can reach agreement that not always repose and bliss. It's a more complicated experience. Sometimes that phrase repose and bliss is translated by other translators peace and comfort, or great ease and joy, or something like easy and pleasant. So how do we fit this description that Dogen is giving in all good faith, I'm sure, with what our actual experience is? And I think it helps to perhaps put it into some greater context. And to that end, I'd like to just go to another translation, and this by the Zen teacher Yohaku Okamura, who has a center in Bloomington, Indiana, that some of you may be familiar with. And translating the same passage, he reads it as this: the Zazen I am talking about is not learning step-by-step meditation. It is simply the Dharma gate of peace and joy. It is the practice enlightenment of the ultimate awakening. In doing Zazen, the koan manifests itself. It cannot be ensnared. You are like a dragon with water or a tiger in the mountain. You must know that true Dharma manifests itself in Zazen, and that, first of all, dullness and distraction are struck down. Well, to complicate some things somewhat, it's known that Dogen had several versions of this text. During his lifetime, after returning from China and before his death at 53 years of age, he was in the practice of going back to his writings and revising them, probably revising them based on his experience, based on a new perspective that he gained during the course of his practice and his life. So it's an understandable process. The translations that are out there of the Fukan Zazenji generally derive from his later revisions. And the two that I read, and both came from what's called the popular version, which is his revision from late in his life. But the version that he first wrote when coming back from China is seemingly available. There is a copy of it with his own signature that is kept at the temple at Eheji. And it purportedly is the one that he wrote first, or early on anyway, upon return from China. And it's a bit longer, interestingly. This is called the Tenpuku version. And this translation is also by Okamura, to keep some consistency here. And he translates this earlier version of the same text in this way. Zazen, which I am talking about, is the Dharma gate of the great peace and joy. If you attain its significance, the four great elements will naturally become light and peaceful. Your mind will be fresh and sharp. Your mindfulness will become clear. The taste of Dharma will support your mind and make it tranquil, pure, and joyful. Then your everyday activities will become in accord with the true nature. When you clearly see the truth, you will be like a dragon that gets water or a tiger in the mountain. You must know that the true Dharma is manifest itself in Zazen, and the dullness and distraction cannot reach you. So there is a little bit more to the story of this text, because when Master Dogen was in China, he was in his mid-20s. His mind was like a sponge, and he absorbed many of the texts that were available to him in China. And some of these texts had been previously available to him in Japan. But one such text was composed about 100 years before Dogen by a Chinese Chan teacher, Zen teacher, Changlu Zhangze. Changlu Zhangze. And he was the first to come up with sort of codified rules for Chan monasteries. And among his writings was a short piece on forms of Zazen. So this is a text that definitely Dogen would be familiar with. And he, as you can see, borrowed heavily from it. This, at that time, wasn't considered plagiarism. People, and we still do this, we still borrow heavily from others. I borrow heavily from others in trying to think of things to talk about on Saturday. But Dogen was interested not whether he was producing something original, but whether he was producing something authentic. And he looked for teachers and writings in China that he thought reflected the true Dharma and were authentic. And this is one such text. And it's a little longer yet, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll read parts of it, and you'll see right away the similarity. It is said that Zazen is the Dharma gate of peace and joy. However, many people get sick because their ways of using their minds is not correct. When you attain its significance, the four great elements will naturally become light and peaceful. Your mind will be refreshed and sharp. Your mindfulness will become clear. The taste of Dharma will support your mind and make it tranquil, pure, and joyful. When you clearly see the truth, you are like a dragon that gets the water, or a tiger in the mountain. If you have not attained it, you are blowing on the fire with wind. Do not make a struggle to attain it. If you only practice confirming the true mind, you will not be coaxed. However, as you get higher in the way, there will be a lot of demons that may bother you. You may go through many kinds of situation, both favorable and adverse. But when your right mindfulness appears, nothing can disturb your sitting. He then goes on to give references so that one can better understand what he means by these demons, and refers to a term which in Japanese is makyo. Makyo is a term that is used to describe some phenomena that can occur during meditation practice. And they can be dramatic. Basically, makyo can be translated as illusions or hallucinations. And some people will have perceptual hallucinations, see things or hear things. They may have sensory hallucinations, like, feeling like there's a spider crawling around on your head, or they may have fantasies and daydreams, as I'm sure we all do at times during meditation practice. So one reason that Changlu was particularly interested in referring to these makyo is that the practice at the time, and practice actually to this day in many places, is during meditation practice, if you think you have sort of experienced kensho or enlightenment, if you think you are actually seeing the true way, you bring it to your teacher, and then your teacher can guide you as to whether this is kensho or makyo, to make a distinction. So you notice that Dogen, especially in his later revision, didn't really talk a lot about illusions and makyo and guarding against such things. He really only emphasized the benefit of sitting practice, and didn't really talk about all these things that can, in a sense, go wrong with it. I think this, in part, is due to Dogen's great faith in the ultimate value of Zazen and the ability of Zazen to clear things up over time. When you think about it, it's what is illusion and what is truth and reality as we're sitting there in Zazen? How do you sort that out? There are a variety of experiences. How do you know what's an illusion, what is not? And expecting that someone else will be able to discern that for you requires a leap of faith as well. I think that for Dogen, he thought that if one just put one's faith in Zazen and practiced it diligently, that all that would work its way through and sort itself out. Another teacher about 75 years after Dogen, a well-known teacher, Kaizon Jokin, I think talks about Zazen in a more balanced way, and perhaps a way that's more down to earth and that we can readily identify with. There was a writing of Kaizon's called At Ease and in Harmony. And I'll read you a small section from that about this topic of Zazen. Sometimes when you are sitting, you may feel cold or hot, discomfort or ease, stiff or loose, heavy or light, sometimes startled. The mind may feel as if it were sinking or floating. It may seem dull or sharp. Sometimes you can see outside the room or inside the body, or the forms of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Sometimes you may believe that in this moment you have attained wisdom and now thoroughly understand all the sutras and commentaries. These extraordinary conditions sometimes arise, but just keep body and mind at ease and deportment in harmony. Shed worldly sentiments and do not become attached to sublime feelings about the way. Though you should not spare the Dharma, do not speak of it unless you are asked. Do not use the way to make yourself important. This is the foremost point to remember. Remain always in great compassion and dedicate the limitless power of Zazen to all beings. Maintain the vow to realize awakening and just sit. Do nothing at all. This is the way to study Zen. So I think I'll stop there, and we will break up into groups in a moment. But I wonder if you can relate these writings about Zazen to your own practice, what you experience. Can you relate to this repose and bliss as features of meditation, and can you distinguish truth from illusion? And what is the standard for that? So we'll break up into groups. I appreciate your listening, and